Good morning, YouTube. Shane here, 4 guys talking cars. Welcome back to the 392 Scat Pack. Love it, but I don't love dust. You guys hate dust? I hate dust in my car. But you know what? If you use this little sucker, I know I'm kind of a nerd. Kind of a dust nerd. If you guys hate dust in your car, these things are really, really cool. You can just kind of swipe everything off, get all the little dust. I'll include a link. These are pretty cool. That's how I keep my interior pristine. So I'm gonna run some errands today, just chat with you a little bit about leasing versus buying, because I've had a lot of cars. And I know my parents and brothers are always like, why do you buy versus lease? And what are the advantages and disadvantages? And what kind of brings you to that decision? So I'm not gonna be super rigid and structured in this conversation, but maybe I can just offer a few pointers because I have owned quite a few cars and have both done purchases and leases on quite a few. And I can speak from experience and some things you gotta watch out for and things I like about leasing versus buying. So let's get right into it. So I decided to purchase, or I should say finance, this car. And when I mean purchase, I typically mean finance. Very few people actually write a check and buy their car outright. They're depreciating assets. So not too many people want to write a check for, $58,000, $60,000 and then maybe turn around and sell it for a loss later. So I've had a mixture of lease versus buy. For me, the number one deciding factor is really about how long do you keep your vehicles, right? So for me, the average length is about 3 years. So that's a perfect opportunity to lease a vehicle. So that's number one, is take a look at your driving patterns. I have brothers and friends that will own a car for 10 years. You ought to buy that car. You should not be leasing, of course, because you turn that in. If you keep your cars for 100,000 miles, you better buy it, purchase it, finance it. That's the way to go. If you don't have a lot to put down and don't drive more than 12 to 15,000 miles per year and don't own your cars very long, leasing's a great option. You can typically buy a higher purchase price vehicle than you can with a purchase, because you're only financing a portion of that with a lease. And so oftentimes you can go in with little or zero money down. In my case, I have never put down $1 on a lease. I usually tell them $0 a drive off, and they'll roll it into your lease, because otherwise you're really not helping yourself out by lowering your payment much. And so don't get suckered into putting a bunch of money down on a lease. Little side note, make sure you always look over the contract and understand what all of the numbers mean on a lease contract. A lot of people don't even know what interest rate. That's called the money factor. You want to know what the money factor is, you times that by 2,500. That is your interest rate. That is negotiable. Some other things I really like about a lease are you really never have to worry about owning a vehicle outside of the warranty period. So most leases are 2 to 3 years, fixed mileage. I usually get a 36,000 mile, 3-year, no money down, and you don't have to worry about owning a car outside of the warranty. You turn it in and you move on to the next. So that's an upside, is the warranty. Second is, you're going to get a new vehicle every 3 years. Of course, the flip side to that is you never own a vehicle. You're dumping a bunch of money every year into a car payment perpetually, and you never have a break from car payments. So that can be a financial strain for those that are looking to get out of that eventually. I think the other things you have to weigh in terms of lease and buy is, if you're gonna purchase something and you can't really afford it, they're gonna try and finance you like a balloon payment, like 96 months to get your payment down. And it sounds great at the time because you're like, oh my gosh, I get the dream car, get the car of my dreams or whatever, and then you're on the hook for the next 7, sometimes 8 years. They have astronomical length of terms these days, and now you're on on the hook for that, and 3, 4, 5 years down the road you try and sell it and you're upside down. Don't get caught in these balloon payments. If you can't go in there and purchase it within a reasonable 60-month loan, you probably should be looking at something cheaper. And that just sort of speaks to, you know what, I didn't get into my car, you know, this is not my first car, and I didn't go out and purchase my dream car. I had to work up, you know, up to that. And I've got a video coming up about all the cars that I've owned, and it just sort of speaks to, this is a progression in life that sort of mirrors your success. And, you know, as your you know, career is more successful and you make more money, you're able to then start looking at, you know, more expensive cars and eventually work up to the car that you really want. Now, leases can be a little bit tricky because people forget that if you go over mileage, you're going to pay for that. Now, it's not a ton of money, but you go over a couple thousand miles, you're going to owe. The other issue is you've got to be careful with modifications. You can't go throwing a bunch of modifications on a leased car, and they want OEM parts. Now, that means OEM original tires, OEM original, you know, if you're to swap something out, you've got to put all that back on. And if it gets in a wreck, you've got to carry that endorsement on your insurance that states that OEM parts are to be put on there. Otherwise, you're in trouble. The other thing about leasing is you never really feel like the car is yours. There's always this, you know, lease end date where you're just renting, and if you do love the car, you can renegotiate at that time, but it's a prediction of the market value, right? So they say, okay, it's 56% residual value. They're predicting that the car is going to be worth that at the end. And you may be in a really, really hot market where you're getting it for a great deal, or you may be in a soft market where you're paying more than you could if you were to go to, like, you know, CarMax or buy it used. So that kind of sucks that you'd have to renegotiate and then finance another term at the end of that. So you never really feel like it's your car. It's just, you know, it's kind of an extended rental type feeling versus, you know, something where you purchase it. It's yours. Yes, you're paying to the bank, but you can do whatever you want to it in terms of modifications. So here's what I'd say about leasing in general is people who lease, if you look at the demographics, tend to be buying higher end cars, because at the end of the day, I've leased multiple BMWs. You don't want, in my opinion, you don't want to own a Mercedes or a BMW out of warranty period. Nobody wants to own those cars. They're incredibly expensive to work on. Parts are just, I don't even want to talk about it. So for me, there's no incentive in trying to finance and buy a car, especially a BMW, over 5-6 years. You're going to be paying a ton of money for that. So those people that tend to lease are Audi, Mercedes, BMW, Lexus, higher end cars, because that makes sense. And their interest rates, money factors are much better than traditional you know, finance loans. So you can get a 2.9 money factor or interest rate on a lease that'll bring your payment way down, and so that's enticing for a lot of people. All right, you guys, so final thoughts. Just make sure you've done your research. Buying a car is a big deal, and you know, the salesman is not got your best interest at heart. They're there to make a sale, and when you leave, they're on to the next. And so when you go in there, be prepared, know what you're doing, look at the risks and benefits, and, you know, balance it out in terms of lease versus buy. And for me, I decided to purchase on this one because I felt like I was going to do a little bit more to this car, and I felt like this is a car that I want to keep. Plus, when I talked to the dealership, the lease rates were terrible versus the finance rates. So not everybody's got good lease rates, and I think the resale value on these cars, especially being a 2021 where there weren't as many made, is going to be decent. So remember, buying a car, and especially the car that you want, you're gonna have to have some patience. You got to crawl before you walk, right? So have some patience. It means a whole lot more when you're able to work for something that you really, really want and that you want to keep. So, all right, pulling up, get some gas. Until next time, guys, thanks so much for your support. Let me know if you have any comments or feedback on the Lease Vs Buy. You guys have a great day. Shane, 4 Guys Talking Cars. Take care.
Dang, that's good.